Welcome to Unit 4, EDSE 510. Great work getting started on our course. It's been wonderful getting to know all of you and working with you on the discussions and providing that feedback on your submissions. Please let me know, as always, if you have any questions on any feedback that you see. This week, we're going to be moving on further into the law, talking a little bit about evaluation, assessment, and the IEP itself, and we will hit on Iep Goals, particularly in this video. So we'll open up the graphic organizer first at the beginning of the unit. You'll see here your assigned reading and the fact that we do not have a discussion board this week. So instead, you'll focus on the assignment for the collaboration question, which we will review. But in addition, the reason that your workload may feel lighter this week is because we have the interview assignment coming up. So please keep an eye on that due date, the deadline. And please also continue to review the rubric, review the assignment description. You want to give yourself plenty of time to conduct that interview and get it done if you haven't already, and then take care of everything required for submission. That is a great thing to focus on this week. So you'll see we have information regarding the law, which is written, and you'll want to just review all of that in the unit as usual. Several different sites to access, and this is just all regarding Iep meetings. A couple interesting links about ridiculous comments heard at Iep meetings is what they're called. Some of them are just interesting to reflect on and see where the school may have been coming from, where the family may have been coming from, and how some of these really unfortunate miscommunications or issues can happen, and think about how we can avoid those. There's also a component here in this unit about student-led Iep meetings. An interesting link here you can review for Iep meetings that students can lead themselves. Keep in mind that there are many different options between a student sitting at the table in an Iep meeting and listening, or a student facilitating and running the entire Iep meeting. All sorts of different levels of contribution that students can give based on their abilities and their comfort levels and what is best for that individual student. And that's another reason why this process is so individualized. So this is a good link to check out and kind of start to reflect, even for younger students, what might be the most appropriate option for collaboration on the team. There are some modules here. You can log in as guest. You'll see that there's approximate time for completion here, so please do make sure to check those out. It's got some good learning, good content. You can take notes as appropriate. And you'll see more documents regarding the IEP and the IFSP. Remember, that's for children from birth to age 3. So we've got a couple different articles and resources, comparison for the IEP and the IFSP. Just make sure that we're clear on some of the components that the IFSP can entail. Even if you do not plan to do any early intervention birth to 3 in your current or future role, it's good to know about this. You may be receiving students who have had such services earlier in their lives, and the families may also be familiar with that. Manifestation determination is very important to understand, and there is a video here. CC option is at the link. Manifestation determination is the process where the IEP team convenes to determine whether a behavioral incident or issue has been a result of the child's identified disability. And if not, the consequence may look different than if it is determined to be a manifestation. So it's quite important that we get familiar with that term. This is a pretty lengthy and in-depth process. It's very important that the IEP team, multidisciplinary team, mental health professionals as appropriate or applicable, and other providers, case manager, administration, that everybody comes together along with the family, parent, or guardian to really make a clear conclusion about the manifestation question. And that can have quite high stakes in that process, even related to suspension, expulsion, etc. There is also some information included here on second language learners in the classroom and over-identification. So do check out the IRIS activity here related to that topic. And there are also several other articles included. You can just choose one to focus on, but feel free to observe the others as well. They'll all be interesting and helpful. A couple other modules on response to intervention. These are good. They can be completed pretty briefly, so do check those out. Just help us to get a more solid understanding of that RTI process. And this is our activity. This is the collaboration question. So quite straightforward. You'll choose one of these 5 reflective questions. You'll respond APA 6th edition as usual. You get that title page, running head, page number up at the top, and submit with a reference page. You'll need to cite your assigned readings at least 2 separate times. So make sure that you get those APA citations in there. Looking at 2 to 4 paragraphs, that's going to end up roughly 1 page, or a little less or a little more. So that will be our assignment, and that will lead us to Unit 5. As you work on this, please do be sure to keep that interview assignment in mind. We're going to look through a lecture from another faculty member here at UNC that was created, and he has provided it for this course on SMART IEP goals. And this Prezi is provided in the unit as well in one of the pages that we just looked at. It's just important for us to think about when we're writing IEP goals, taking a look at those academic goals. What can we do to make them the most effective, measurable, appropriate, relevant, time-bound goals that they can possibly be? How can we collaborate and consult with others to ensure that we're doing that? And how can we make sure that they're legally compliant? So we'll take a look at a few different ideas in this Prezi. What are IEP goals based on? You're always going from the present levels of performance. So it's often said, in my background and with district level specialists I've worked with, they always share needs, drive goals, drive services. So the student identified needs, when you have that comprehensive evaluation or that update, in the review on present levels of performance, where does the child stand? What kind of grades are we looking at? What attendance are we looking at? What are the updates on the IEP goals that were previously in place? What is the teacher feedback saying? What is the student saying? And as applicable for older students, what is the transition goal? All of those things are in mind as we create our IEP goals based on those present levels of performance, making these very individualized and realistic and appropriate, not just going off of grades. So just because a student has a low grade in math does not mean that we need a math goal. It could be that the teacher fit is not necessarily working out. We need to examine that. It could be that the student is having difficulties with focus or attendance or engagement or motivation, or that there's some other barrier affecting that grade. So remember to take the whole picture of present levels of performance into consideration. And these are often referred to as annual goals. It does not have to be annual. It can be revisited and added or changed whenever a review meeting takes place, which typically is once a year. You want to do it no less than once a year, but it can happen more often, especially if a change of placement is being considered. You want to review the impact of the goal on the student's involvement in the general education classroom. So look at just what will be appropriate for their developmental skills, but they weren't directly connected to state standards or academic learning expectations for other students in the general education population. And this resulted in lower performance and achievement, and lower expectations. So now It is required that we relate and connect our goals, no matter what those goals may be, to state standards for the grade level of that particular student. Regardless of what the goal is, it does need to be related. It could be much more basic than what the state standard sounds like it's describing, but the important thing is that the goal that is written directly connects to the expectation held in that state standard, as it is filling in any gap that might exist there to that grade level standard. It's very important to keep eyes on those. And additionally, this allows general education providers to understand what we're talking about when we share an IEP goal and connect it to that academic standard. That's just helpful for understanding and collaboration. So these goals in the IEP reviews, or whenever they're updated and created, would need to be measurable. It's very important that we can monitor them closely to see what kind of progress is taking place. You may also see objectives for IEP goals, and it's kind of dependent on the situation whether you will see these objectives, kind of little breakdowns there of the goal itself. So you can see relationships between objectives and the needs of the student. That's pretty specific to the situation. So I'm sure that you're all familiar with the acronym SMART for SMART goal, but we're looking at strategic or specific, measurable goals. That's where the progress monitoring comes in. Attainable, it is realistic, it's doable within the time period set. It's results driven and time bound. Results driven could be the attachment to that state standard, and time bound, we're saying by this time, this is where we're going to be. So keep in mind for the progress monitoring, to see how a student is doing on an IEP goal, we want to have that system set in place. In the presentation, we'll get to this, but we're talking about data collection, whether it's a teacher-created test or measurements based on teacher gradebook and certain assessments that might be used. We want to make sure that it could be transferable and that it could travel to another school or district. We never know when a student may relocate. It's very important to make it applicable across settings to target these specific skills, whatever that goal may be. So when you're writing a goal, you will use the student's name. If it is a transition IEP for an older student, you'll connect it directly to what you have identified as an IEP team as that student's post-secondary goal. That can occur through a transition interview and some other inventories for transition planning. You can identify that post-secondary goal and connect it to the IEP goal. When given a short story, or when provided or presented with this or that, a student will describe the target behavior. These are some good action words. Can we measure them? So complete, compare, analyze. We're linking all of these to skill sets. And then we have to identify the criteria. What kind of rate or accuracy or duration, frequency? This can be very specific to the goals. So how will we know that the student is making progress or has met the goals? And here, as I mentioned, we're addressing now some different ways to monitor that progress on that goal. So that could be a portfolio review, probes, directed assessment, targeted evaluation, and testing. And then you'll just want to say when that progress reporting will come out, which is different depending on grade level, often in alignment with teacher gradebook. So keep in mind we need this schedule because then each year or at the time of each review, we will be able to move forward, know where the student stands, and create new goals as appropriate, dependent upon progress. So there are some examples included in this presentation. These are really good examples, so I'll leave this here. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a wonderful unit.